Why, hello, WCA. It is Mike Amori here for the first update, Winter 2019. I would like to welcome all the new students. We have Sophie, her brother Benji. We have two Gabes. I have Jack. We have Donald coming in next week, amongst others. If I missed your name, my apologies, but welcome everyone. Every week there'll be an update, sometimes in the form of a video, sometimes I'll post puzzles. We're usually going to look at positions we did in class to review, throw in a couple of new ones, and a lot of times go over your games. We're going to mix it up, okay? So here is a position that we did not do in class. Do not worry if you can't solve these. Let the moves gloss over your eyes so that you at least start hearing the names of these patterns and seeing them. And of course, by all means, know how to pause your video so that you can try this stuff out on your own. This is actually from a Grandmaster game that ended with a nice checkmate. It is Black's turn, and Black played the pawn move to b5. And it all looks pretty good, right? Except for one problem. You see the king over here, the Black king? He's really strong because he's attacking a pawn in White's camp. And if you could get this king to move away, the king could take this pawn, and then these two black pawns up here might start marching up the board, and that would be very dangerous for White. So the reason Black pushed this pawn was hopefully to make a trade, and then you see this rook up here? Get it down to b2, win this pawn, chase the king away, and Black might even checkmate White in that kind of position. One problem. Black missed this gorgeous move, rook a to f7. At first, doesn't seem like it's a big deal because Black went on to take the pawn, and look at their plan. They're going to come back down here with the rook and get a good game. Pause your video. White can force a checkmate. Okay, did you find it? Let's see what you found. Rook f4 check. Only one move. Notice you can't take the rook because of the pin. There's a pin here. There's a rook. The only move is king h5, and then a beautiful rook sacrifice. Rook h4 check. The only way Black gets out of check is to take the rook. And then, I love these moves. Little pawn move. Checkmate. Pretty cool, right? All right, let's take a look at another. Okay, this is White to move, and Black had just brought their queen over here to g4. If you look at the material, you can count it up. White has 5 pawns, Black has 5 pawns. There are 2 minor pieces for Black, 2 minor pieces for White, but go a little further. What do you notice? That's right, White is down a whole rook. I didn't show you how the players got here. There was a sacrifice or two along the way, and White ended up down a rook. But they had a very, very, very cool plan. White to play and win. Let's see what you find. Did you find this awesome queen sacrifice? Queen c7 check. And when you see it, there's only one way to get out of check. The king can't take Big Mama here because of the knight. The only way to take is with the knight here. But you'll notice that there's this sneaky rook down here that wants to hop over the knight, land on d8, and checkmate the king. Very similar to the famous game that Paul Morphy played. Aha. There's the whistle. Well, how do you finish? Knight b6 check. That's right, just give the knight away. You don't need it. Pawn takes knight, rook d8 checkmate. You guys see it? Awesome. How about from here? Can you see it again? Pause the video. Do it in your head. Very good. Okay, my friends, another Grandmaster game. This one ends with a sacrifice that, you know, you'd have to spend a little bit of time before playing this move, but, you know, you're going to learn at the WC to always look at every check and capture. I want you to look at rook takes knight up here on f8. And before you go any further, I want you to tell me what's going to happen if the queen takes the rook. You see the queen here on e7? She can take the rook. We'll do the king next. But first, pause the video and see if you can calculate what would happen. Rook takes knight, queen takes rook. Okay, let's take a look. Rook takes knight. King has to get out of check. You either take it with the king or the queen. There's no other choice, right? If the queen takes, you have a really nice checkmating pattern. That's good to know. You start with the bishop checking on h7. And it's important to use the bishop so that your queen stops the king from getting out. You guys see that? Good. King has to go to h8, and that's going to lead into a discovered check. Bishop g6 check. King goes to g8, and checkmate. Pretty cool, right? Awesome. Now let's look again. Rook takes. Naturally, we have to look at what happens if the queen takes. If the king takes. Okay, king takes. Now how do we checkmate? Watch the pattern. If you can do it yourself, awesome. If not, watch the pattern. Queen h8 check. Only move king f7. And now you have to find this gorgeous sacrifice. Bishop g6 check. I love these moves. Just give the bishop away, but it's so sneaky. If the king takes that bishop, it's mate in one. You can find it. Beautiful. If the king does not take the bishop, what does he do? King e6. Well, we give him a little check over here. And I love this pawn. You see these dark squares over here? The king can't get to these dark squares. So how do you get out of check? If you move your king here, which looks good to me, bishop f5 check. The king has no escape. You have to block with your queen. You take it with your queen. King comes to d8 and checkmate. Nice. Okay, we did this one in all the classes. All the classes did this one. There's a forced checkmate here for white. And it's pretty much based on the fact that you can open up the black king. Pause your video and see if you can force a checkmate. Okay? Did you find knight f6 check? Isn't that great? You just give away the knight. Black pretty much has to take it, because if the king just moves out of check, you have mate in one. You guys got that, right? Looks good. So after the check, you have to take with the pawn. Do you know how to finish from here? Again, always pause your video. Pause it, study the position, come up with a plan, play your moves. Cool. Little check. What do? King has to come to the side. And now how to win. Look at that arrow down there. Yeah, just jump the rook right over the king's head. Game's over. King g2. Beautiful. You may have a check up here. You can just block the check with a pawn. And they're going to have to start giving away pieces. Otherwise, one of these rooks is going to come to this line. Game is over. Very nice. Another nice position we did in class. This kind of position, it's very easy to miss these tactics. We talked about who is better in this position, whether you like the white bishop or the black bishop, and everybody pretty much agreed that this pin was really strong. We thought the white rook was better than the black rook. We also talked about the endgame idea of using your rook to cut the king off in these endgame type positions. But here, turns out there's a tactic where white is going to win a piece. You remember the tactic? Of course, stop your video. Rook b8. Game over. What a cool move. If the rook takes the rook, and that's what happened in the game, you're going to take this bishop, check, and then winning the rook back. So you're actually winning a piece. If the rook tries to go somewhere else, you're going to take the bishop for free. Remember, the rook is pinned up there. So the game continuation went rook takes rook, bishop takes check, king moved, bishop took, and pawn a6. We used to use this position as a training game, and every now and then a player with the black pieces would find a way to draw this game. They'd come up with some sneaky way to get out of this somehow, but I'll show you how the grandmasters finish this game. You just push the pawn to c4. The idea is to start a race between this pawn and this king. So black better get over there to stop the pawn. You push it again. The king comes over. you push it again. And by doing that, check this out. You got that little wall. You see, it's hard for the king to get here because he can't move like a knight. He can't come here because of the bishop, and he can't come here because of the pawn. If he goes underneath the pawn, it's going to run home in queen. So what does he do? If he stays inside where the pawn is, you just move your king over. What's the idea of that move? To take this little path and start picking on these pawns. If they create a wall like this to stop your king from getting in, then you sneak in this way. What's your idea? Trying to get this king to move back so you can come up and queen your pawn. They might try to move the pawn on the side, and we play b3 and stop the pawn from moving. If they play king e8, we play king e6. You're going to queen very shortly. If they don't play king e8 and play a move like g5, watch this. Walk your king over, go after the pawns. King to d8, and you can actually go underneath the pawn. It looks scary because the front pawn's going to run. Not going to help. You just take the side pawn. Because if this pawn moves again, you just take it. If the king comes after your bishop, you just block that runaway pawn, and there's no way to get after this guy. Game is over. Okay, one more, my friends. Bishop c6 was just played by black. This is a really, really cool position. Your queen is worth 9 points. The bishop is worth 3. I have students who go to math class on Monday after coming to the WCA, and they tell their teachers that like 3 is greater than 9. Yeah, why not? Sacrifice the queen. Why not? Pawn takes, you have a runaway pawn. Very hard to stop that. Black came up with a beautiful idea. Queen d8 stops the pawn. Once the pawn queens, black thought they had this beautiful little move, rook to d1. Your rook takes, and now the poor queen up here has no defense, so black takes it, but black missed an awesome move by white. Can you find it? White to play and win. Pause your video. Knight b7. Pretty cool, right? If the queen takes the knight, the rook's going to checkmate the black king. If you try to make a runaway with your pawn, just rook d8 check. The queen's going to be lost. Knight takes d8. King f8. And then, I don't know, if the pawn tries to make a run for it, your king is in time to stop it. And white has an extra knight. I'm going to stop here. I hope you guys enjoyed the puzzles. Your games were really good in class. We'll see some of those next week. I can't wait to get back in the classroom. Have a good week, everyone.